Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us, Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase pricing and availability questions concerning this watch. In late 2016, Ulysse Nardin pared down its famous Sonata Alarm GMT. Less avant-garde and more classical, the 2016 model with a blue dial and a steel titanium case hybrid gave birth to this early 2017 variant, which combines a silver-white dial with the steel titanium case hybrid. So the bezel is titanium, the case back is titanium, the mid-case is steel, and yet it retains the cathedral gong minute repeater style alarm that you remember from the original models, which debuted all the way back in 2003. Now the watch in here is the variant 44 millimeters in diameter, 14.1 millimeters thick, and from lug tip to lug tip 51 millimeters with a 21 millimeter spacing between the lugs. You're already noticing that this is a much more classic version of the Sonata, and indeed this is called the Ulysse Nardin Classic Sonata. It wears large on the wrist, partly due to the shape of the lugs, partly due to the size of the case, but the case also doubles as a resonator, so it is purposefully large. On my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference, it wears fairly nicely. I would say that if your wrist is my size or larger, you can wear it just fine. If your wrist is any smaller, you're probably going to want to seek a smaller Ulysse Nardin option. But the watch does not protrude over the end of my wrist on either side, and you can see from over the top, even though it exaggerates the width of the watch from this angle, it will fit inside of the boundaries of my wrist. And here, it'll slide under a cuff, maybe not the tightest of dress sleeves, but just about all jackets. So the watch includes something that's characteristic of a lot of Ulysse Nardin watches past and present, which is a strap that integrates with the flank of the case. It traces the arc of the case, it traces the slope of the lugs, and that does create a very integrated, all-of-a-piece look with no daylight between the two, but also some stiffness, and particularly before the strap wears in and softens up, it creates a little bit of flare past the end of the lugs. Just keep that in mind. That's why I think 16 centimeters and up is a good size wrist for this watch. It is a very substantial strap. They're not shorting you the leather. Look how thick it is. Large, rectangular, symmetrical scales, always an expensive, high-quality cut of the animal with a little bit of a distressed type of treatment and a semi-gloss. You can see that there's bolstering or stuffing to give it volume, folded edge, monotone stitch on the bottom calfskin. Ulysse Nardin factory strap in outstanding condition. You can see the UN logo right here. We have a full folding clasp, UN logo externally, twin trigger release so it cannot pop open inadvertently. Inside the UN logo with polish and media blast. And then we have these little ceramic spring-loaded pin snaps, so over time the steel cannot wear down the pin snaps and the tolerances will remain snappy. Jump into the case. Okay, here's where it feels most like a traditional Ulysse Nardin, less classical and a little bit more offbeat. We have these stepped lug profiles that are sharply broken out from the case band, which is an impressive feat of case manufacturing. The closer you get, you can see the sharpness of the break between the two, and it really is quite attractive. It looks like these lugs were welded, which is sort of a laborious way of making a case. So it's a very traditional case construction method. We have a little insert in Ulysse Nardin nautical blue with the anchor to remind you that in its heyday as a maker of marine chronometers, Ulysse Nardin was one of the foremost names in the construction of navigation clocks used on the bridges of ships. For the same reason, the watch features an individual number plate on the flank held by fired screws. That's how it would have been done on a marine chronometer. So the first thing that you see here is that there's a lot going on, although it's arguably simplified compared to the classical Sonata. So you can see here I have the ability to move the local hour hand, and that using these GMT plus minus pushers, I can move it in either direction as I change time zones, even jumping the date forward or backwards as I cross the international date line. If I want to move everything all at once, I pull the crown out to the intermediate position, and now you can see how I'm able to move the 24-hour secondary time zone along with the local time zone. In terms of when all these things came out, the original plus minus was a GMT concept debuted on the San Marcos, I believe in 1994, and the Sonata originally came out in 2003, and shortly after that, it gained minute repeater style cathedral gongs to become the Sonata Cathédrale, and then we were off to the races with what is more or less the modern version of the watch. Cathedral gongs, alarm with a minute repeater governor, and a dual time capability. So we still have the big date there, But one thing that makes this a little bit, by the way, we have an on-off toggle for the arms. Just keep that in mind. If you want to have it wound and armed, you can do so, but you can also disarm it so it's wound and ready to set without winding. I can also disactivate or deactivate it, just like that. But you can hear the quality of that chime. It's not just that it has good volume. It will wake you up from your sleep. It has a sonic quality indistinguishable from a high-quality minute repeater. It's lyrical. It has wonderful sustain. It's a full sound. It's the full minute repeater experience. Now, this is not a minute repeater. It will not chime the time. What it will do is activate an alarm when the time that has been set has been reached by the hands at center. Now I'm going to demonstrate the setting of the alarm here. You actually pull the crown out all the way. Now you could see how there is a little sort of AM PM indicator there so that the alarm knows the difference between, for example, 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. So you can see nothing there is dark, so you are looking at 10 a.m. Now, when we start to move back into the nighttime hours, you can see how the shading returns, and now we're looking at 7 p.m. right there. So that's how you set this. It does know the difference between day and night, 12 noon and midnight. So in addition to the ability to disarm the alarm, you also have the ability to set it in a 24-hour format, which is very important because most alarm watches set to a 12-hour format, which means they will go off whether it is day or night. So you have 2 degrees of protection against that. First, you can turn it off. Second, you can set it correctly. Now, in terms of everything else going on, it's all based on the UN caliber 67, which is probably the least changed part of the watch compared to a traditional Sonata. You can see we have this lovely distressed sort of rustic patterned white gold rotor with blue lacquered Sonata Cathédrale. So you remember that this is the cathedral gong version. By the way, what does that mean? It's worth reviewing. Traditional gongs go around the movement once. They are wire chimes that are hit by a hammer, and you can see the striker right there. When you see Sonata Cathédrale, what you are looking at is cathedral gongs, the cathédrale. It is the double, or I should say 1.5 encompassing gong. So the gong goes around the movement one time and then halfway around again. And it doesn't necessarily create a louder chime, but it creates a more beautiful one. And it's something that's broadly sought in the world of minute repeaters, whose sonic qualities more or less define the total quality of the mechanism. And this is a very good one, considering this is an alarm and not a minute repeater, punches way above its weight. You can see we have ceramic ball bearings for higher efficiency. This is a magic lever style winding system. UN's base movements for decades have been based on the automatic portion of an ancient Lemania chronograph, and so this adopts the Lemania's bidirectional pawl-based winding system, but updates it with ceramic ball bearings. It beats away at 4 hertz. It's got a 42-hour power reserve, and almost unbelievable 109 joules, because when you combine the base movement with the chiming system, the double-digit date, the arming, disarming, the setting system, the second time zone, you wind up with 109 joules in the movement. Also important, you can see that little lacquered anchor insert. From an aesthetic standpoint, I enjoy that. We have circular Côte de Genève. We have blued screws. We have solarization and satination on the wheels where they are visible. Some updates that you would not have found on the original Sonata or Sonata Cathédrale. This is the free-sprung balance, which is now able to take and hold an adjustment without susceptibility to shock-induced timing deviation. So free-sprung allows you to adjust more precisely. We also have recessed bolts to reduce the impact of aerodynamic drag on the balance. So this is free-sprung for precision, for shock resistance, and less aerodynamic impact on timing. Now there's more. There's an anti-magnetic silicon hairspring and a silicon escapement. So the hairspring and the escapement in combination help to liberate the watch from the impact of temperature and magnetism on timing, and also it reduces the need for lubrication on the escapement. So it's a very well-decorated, albeit mostly machine-finished movement that is intricately handmade and adjusted, and then equipped with some modern technology. And Ulysse Nardin, it should be noted, makes its own silicon through its Sigitech affiliate. It's probably the smallest company in the business that is able to make its silicon as opposed to buy it or use it under license from Rolex, Swatch Group, and Patek, which generally own the patent on things like silicone hairsprings in the Swiss watch industry. 30 meters water resistance, so you don't necessarily want to take it swimming, but it's a fairly sporty take on the traditional Sonata, being a little bit more durable in titanium and steel than the conventionally platinum or gold Sonata models. Reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.